It says 4 o'clock on the thing. But
Okay, so
so it's going to start in a minute. It hasn't gone live on your page yet.
okay, it hasn't gone live on my page. And anything yet?
Okay, live stream now.
Okay. Is it going?
No, it just says offline.
This is why live stream is starting soon, it says on there. And this is why I thought, well, I start streaming at 10 to 4 to give it time to catch up.
I don't think it has. I think it has more to do with what time you set the stream to start at. Via
Okay.
YouTube. I don't think it has anything to do with when you
Live
actually
stream is
stream.
starting. So we're still on live stream is starting soon.
Yep.
And are you clicking on there?
Yeah, I'm just refreshing it.
Okay. But I went to this one and it says I'm streaming at the moment. That live stream is starting soon. Still says live stream is starting soon.
Okay, you're on now.
I am?
Yep.
Okay, so if I click on hello, apparently I'm on. So should I, if I refresh the screen?
Try refreshing it, yeah.
And I'm not going to lose the, oh, there I am.
Yeah, it's streaming now.
Okay, so, and if I need to talk to my technical person here. Okay, so we began. So I'm going to leave this on here, right?
Yeah.
That's for the chat. And for the rest, I don't need to look at this because that's what people are going to see. Okay, so I'm going to here and I'm going here. So I can just talk now.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, I'm good to go. Apparently I'm good to go. Okay, well, it's shortly after 4 o'clock. I click on 4 to 5 on YouTube's event setup situation, and then at 4 o'clock I click start streaming, and it takes a minute. And I'm reminded, as I'm telling you this, I'm reminded, when you're doing a presentation, this is, let's say you're doing a presentation at work or something like that, you never begin with an apology. And I realised as I was apologising, that I was beginning with an apology. So that's something to remember. You don't start with an apology. Given all that, okay, it's 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and here I am about to begin. So today, this is being recorded by YouTube, and then once I'm finished, they'll process it and they're going to upload a copy to the website or to YouTube. So you will be able to watch this later. But I had thought what I would do is a kind of continuation of the last live stream, because in the last live stream I gave you the letters of the alphabet that go with the major trumps, so that you can, instead of having a word like somebody's name or an idea or a word, you can begin to get an idea of what's involved in that word. Or let's say you take a city like London. What's London like? It's London. So you've got 6 letters and you've got Londo. There's 2 N's and 2 O's. So you've got 4 different cards that in a certain sequence and a certain combination describe the nature of the city of London or Rome or Paris or whatever it happens to be. You can take a city, but instead of reading a guidebook, you can do your own kind of little guidebook to London by considering L, which is the Hanged Man, O, which is the Tower, N for the Temperance card, D for the Emperor, O for the Tower again, and N for the Temperance card. And by considering those major trumps and their symbolism, their significance, their combination, you get an idea of what to expect in London or what to expect of London. And in the same way, you can do this with somebody's name. So Peter, P-E-T-E-R, anybody called Peter, you begin with P, which is the star card, E for the Hierophant, T for the Fool, E for the Hierophant, and R for Judgment. So you get an idea of the kind of experiences that somebody called Peter is going to have, because John doesn't have any P, an E, a T, or an R in it. Right? So the kind of things that happen to me, shown by John, which is the Wheel of Fortune, the Tower, can't remember H, the Justice card, and N, which is the Temperance card. Those kinds of cards conjure up, describe certain types of situations that I would not normally or naturally come into contact with. It can also give you an idea of the lessons that you're meant to learn. So I don't have an L. L is the Hanged Man, right? So if you've got an L in your name, in your Christian name, then you have to learn to be patient, or situations that force you to be patient are the kind of things that you're going to experience. Whereas I haven't had much. Obviously, there's been times when I've had to learn to be patient, but it hasn't been a normal occurrence for me, and it hasn't been something that I've really the kind of life lessons, you can say, that I've had haven't really revolved around learning to be patient, right? Because John is more like rushing into things and messing things up from the O, the second letter, as the Tower representing, messing things up. Okay, so this are you off? Okay, thank you. So this hour, or less than an hour now, was going to be more about the letters of the alphabet and the major trumps that go along with them. And if you're watching this and you sign in, you can... I've got a screen in front of me that is supposed to give me names and comments of people who are logged into the broadcast, and who can type in on your computer. You can type something in, and other people will see other people will see it. And if you've got questions, I'll deal with them ideally as they come up. So I wanted to begin though with a couple of general points. And the first one is, don't get carried away with the tarot, or don't get carried away, period. And don't get carried away with yourself. And this is because when you look at the tarot and astrology and numerology and subjects like that, it's so because you discover something that is so interesting and it's exciting, and it seems to be the truth, and you want to share it with other people, but then maybe you share it and they don't get it the same way that you do, and it can lead to difficulties in that way. But so with taking a name like Anne, as I did last time, A-N-N-E, I think it was A-N-N-E. So we've got the Magician, Temperance, and the Hierophant, and that's Anne's sequence, or Anne's method, maybe, or Anne's lessons, or the lessons of anybody called A-N-N-E. So when you first look at the letters that go with the major trumps, and you translate or turn a word or a name or a concept into major trumps, it's really easy to get carried away, and begin to see all sorts of significance in the connections that you make, or in the insight that you think you've got, which may actually be insight, but remind yourself regularly that you're not supposed to get carried away, especially don't get carried away with yourself, because there is this idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there is the idea of bias confirmation, that we're built to see things a certain way, and because we're expecting a certain situation, we see apparent proof of it or evidence for it. But the only reason we see the evidence is because we were looking for some kind of confirmation of what we already believed. So people seem to be generally built so that you have an idea in your mind, and then you look at the world and you see what you want to see. Right? That could be why it's so difficult to convince somebody of something they don't already believe. Right? If you believe I can't think of an example offhand at the moment, but the point is that because we see what we want to see, it's so easy to get carried away, and you can get, actually, you don't realize it, but you can be confused, or you can be seeing proof where none exists. And this happens a lot, especially with astrology, I think, and more particularly, but also with the tarot. So as an example, I've got some cards set up here. So I can hold out the Magician, right? Let's say I say to you, what's the most important thing for you watching now, right? So I'm talking to you, and I'm saying to you, the most important thing for you right now is, and I pick a card and I get the Magician, and I say to you, the most important thing for you right now is you need to come up with ideas, you need to be inventive and creative, and you need to be like the Magician. Okay, so, and if you've had ideas that you've thought about doing something with, you're going to think, how did you know that? Yeah, that's right. I really ought to be putting my ideas into practice. Or I really should have listened to myself earlier, and when I had that idea, done something about it. Right? So I'm telling you, go out and make things happen the way the Magician would. And if you've got ideas, follow them through and put them into practice the way the Magician would. And have ideas and write it all down and be creative. And you can see the sense of that, and you can be encouraged to go out and do that kind of thing. And it all makes sense. But I could just as easily have picked the High Priestess and said to you, okay, the most important thing for you right now is separate yourself from other people for a while and think about what it is that you want to do and the direction you want to go in, and make sure that you move forward taking with you what belongs to you or what you want to take with you. And you don't take ideas or people that really don't belong in your life anymore. Right? So again, that if you've been thinking about organizing your life, that's going to make an awful lot of sense. So it can appear that I'm talking to you, even though I'm not. It can appear that I'm talking to you and telling you something of great significance. But the thing is, I could have picked any card and told you some meaning for that particular card, and you can see the sense of it because it's all good information in the tarot. And you can think, that's hit the nail right on the head, even though maybe you've got 40 nails that I could have hit the head of, right? Because maybe at any time in our life, we haven't probably got just one thing that we ought to do. We could make improvements or changes in different areas of life, and some things are more pressing than others. This is why I think if somebody turns a card, let's say somebody asks a question about relationships, and the reader turns a card and gets coins or pentacles, and the reader thinks, okay, this is pentacles, it's money. Maybe the tarot is answering a question other than the one that was asked. So the reader says to the questioner, is there something else you've got in your mind? And the answer is obviously yes, because we've always got, all of us, all the time, have more than one thing in our mind. So you could pick something like something obscure. I'm trying to think of something that can't think of an example. But let's say it's time to clean the house, right, or tidy up where you live. So I can look around, and obviously I can always do tidying up, right? And I've got things that are half finished. So you could ask me, I asked about relationship, but is there something else I could ask about? Maybe, is it time to reorganize? It's always time to reorganize. We can always be working on getting better organized, or getting a better night's sleep, something like that. So it's easy to get carried away. And I'm suggesting that if you work with the letters of the alphabet and major trumps, that you don't get carried away. And if you do a reading as well, don't get carried away, especially don't get carried away with yourself. And the reason I'm saying that is I came across this video a couple of days ago. I didn't know. I think I had seen this person maybe 3 years ago talking about the Fool and major trumps in the tarot and giving his own take on it. So there was an interview with him, and he talked about, it was a recent interview, and so he talked about the attack on the people in Paris that, I can't remember when it was, the very recent one around Christmas time. Okay, so there was the attack, and there was a football game, and there was the attack in the nightclub, and various restaurants were machine gunned. So the fellow was talking about the attack in Paris and how it's directly attributable to Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto, the planet, at the moment is traveling through the planet through the sign Capricorn, right? And so he says this attack happened because Pluto's in Capricorn. And then he mentioned that the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, Pluto takes 250 years to go once around the zodiac, and it spends a long time in each sign, and it's going to be in Capricorn for I think 14 years, right? So there's something slightly askew about starting with one event for an hour and a half in Paris one evening, and relating it to something that's taking 14 years to complete. But anyway, so he said the last time Pluto was in Capricorn, you also had the French Revolution, like in 1789. Pluto was in Capricorn as well, and you had the French Revolution, Paris, capital of France, French Revolution, Pluto in Capricorn, and he talks about this, and then he says, and the time before that, you had the invention of the printing press, because Gutenberg was 250 years before the French Revolution. And the interviewer, who's on the other line, or on the other end of the telephone, says, wow, that's incredible. And it isn't incredible, because it's just not. But it's the kind of thing that people do. They think they've got something, or they think they've got some key piece of information, and they get carried away with it, and they build something on top of it, and it really leads nowhere. Although the person who's building it up and getting carried away thinks it's really going somewhere. And I'm giving this as an example so that you don't get carried away. One way to deal with this is you do what you do, and you go through your life and its situations. So you do it, but also be an observer of yourself and have a second camera, so to speak, focusing on you as well as focusing on what's happening. And you'll find that you don't as easily get carried away, or you recognize that you're enthusiastic about something, but maybe there's other things going on as well. So yeah, okay. And I also wrote down, I've got a couple of things that I wrote down, and I wrote down Carlin weather, and this is because there was a comedian, he died a couple of years ago, I think. His name was George Carlin, and some of his routines were really funny. This is he was popular in the 60s, or at least in the 70s and 80s. So there was one time I heard him on the radio. There was a Sunday night program, a radio show in Toronto. I came here in 1980, 1981. I'm used to listen to this radio show on Sunday night. And so that's how I heard George Carlin. And he did this routine once. I can't remember the details of it, but he talked about, he did this, he had this person that he played, and he was the weatherman. And he said, okay, to the weather, and he did a weather report, and he said, tonight it's going to be dark with increasing light in the morning, which I think is very funny, because obviously it's going to be dark at night, and obviously there's increasing light in the morning. But that's the kind of thing I think you get when people get carried away with themselves. They state something that's totally obvious, but they act as if it's got meaning beyond just being obvious. And I think that's what you can do. So when you're looking at letters of the alphabet and major trumps that can be replaced by them, if that makes sense. So you've got, let's say, the name Anne, A-N-N-E. So instead of thinking Anne, think the magician, temperance, and the Hierophant. But don't get carried away with it, because it's easy to do. And then you start reading things into the card or the word that really aren't there. But it can also be stating something that's completely obvious. And because it's obvious, it's not really that remarkable, but treating it as if it's totally significant. And the other way to deal with this, I think, is, let's say you make a grocery list. You need to go to the store to get some stuff. So you write, you know that you may get there and you're going to forget something, so you write down a little list that you can look at when you're in the grocery store to make sure that you don't leave something behind, or you don't go there and have to go back later, right? You want a list. So what you do is you scribble down a list of things you have to get in the grocery store. And that's all it is, it's a list. But you don't panic if you haven't made the complete list correctly the first time, because you know I can always add something later, or if I'm on the way to the grocery store and I remember something, I can always add it to the list. It's not like I have to come up with the perfect list and I can never change it, because you can also go through your list a second time and remove stuff that you put on that it turns out you don't actually need. Right, so it can work both ways. You've got your list, you've got your basic first idea, and then you can add to it, you can also take away from it. So when you're looking, or if you're looking at a word or a name, and you've substituted major trumps of the tarot, and you're going through and trying to figure out what it tells you or what it might mean, think of it as a grocery list, that as you go through the major trumps and see combinations or see connections or have ideas about what the combination of letters is telling you, or what it's maybe telling you. Think of it as a grocery list. So it's like, also think of it as a first draft. Right? Let's say you have to write an essay, or somebody writes a book. They normally your first attempt isn't what you end up with, because you write it out and it's a first draft, and then you look at it and you fix it up, and you make maybe small changes, big changes, it doesn't matter what, but you make changes to it, and that's a second draft. And then maybe you let it sit for a couple of days, and you look at it again, and then you rework it, or you maybe spot where it was weak and make it stronger, or else you decide that this particular point that seemed to be very important the first time you wrote it down turns out to be really unimportant, so you get rid of that, you clean it up, you remove some and create some space for other better ideas to come in. So that's got a first draft, second draft, third draft. But the point is, the first draft was just a first. You look at it and you're not that worried, because you know it's just a first draft. So if you're looking at words or names using the major trumps of the tarot, relax and think of it as, okay, it's a first draft. I'm going to look at this and see what I get, but I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to stick with the first ideas that I get. If I see nothing, I don't have to be bothered, and I don't have to think that I don't know anything because I wasn't able to come up with it the first time through. Right, it's a first draft. And it's the same with doing a reading for somebody. Maybe somebody you know, somebody you don't know, it really doesn't matter. But people want to do readings, but they think the reading is like something that's chiseled out of solid rock and it's there forever. And so there's a huge amount of responsibility. I must get it right the first time, and I can't leave out anything that's important. And readers put pressure on themselves to perform, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to do a reading, it's a first draft, I'm going to do what I can with it, and it means that the next reading I do is going to be a little bit better because I've had experience of this first one. And it also means that with this reading that I'm going to do, I'm not going to be able to say absolutely everything. And I'm obviously going to remember things that I could have said later, but I didn't at the time. And there can be good reasons for this as well, because people, it's up to the questioner to hear what they're being told. And sometimes people just don't want to hear what cards show. It can be not what they expect, not what they want, not what they're prepared to handle. So you can do the reading for somebody and then later wish you had mentioned this particular aspect. And you think, I should have mentioned it. Why didn't I mention it? Maybe the person didn't want to know it at the time, and that's why you didn't tell them this thing that you realize later might have been important. So think of a reading as a first draft, and that you don't need to put pressure on yourself when doing a reading. And you don't need to get it all 100% accurate every time, the first time you look at anything, because it's a little bit of exploration as well, and you're learning as you go. And also, because you already know even a little bit about all the cards, you're going to be able to say something that's worthwhile for the questioner. Because you can tell somebody a huge amount of information, and all they remember is one thing. So it's not like if you don't cover everything, you're doing a bad job. It can be that all the person's going to remember is one point anyway. So all the rest of it was just filler. it might have been really good filler, but from the point of view of the questioner, and the questioner is the important person in the equation of you, the deck, and the questioner. It's up to them what they take away from the reading. And sometimes people just want to hear what they want to hear. And remember confirmation bias, so you can find that somebody wants to know if it's going to work out with this individual, and the spread says no. But all they want to hear is remember Dumb and Dumber, the movie Dumb and Dumber, when Jim Carrey, his character says to the woman, can't remember her name, so do I have a chance with you? And she says, yes, 1 in a million, which means no. And Jim Carrey's response is, so I have a chance, 1 in a million. I mean, it's unrealistic, but that's what he took from that conversation with the woman, even though she's trying to ditch him nicely and kindly, but honestly, because 1 in a million, it's not going to work. But he takes it his way because he wants her, right? And that can be what you're up against with the reading as well. So think of a reading as a first draft, and then there's less pressure on you to see and know absolutely everything. And also, when you think about it afterward, you don't need to be that hard on yourself. There can be good reasons why you didn't mention something that later you think you should have. Okay. Okay, so what I want to look. Okay, this next bit. I deliberately didn't think that much about it because I wanted it to be spontaneous, and I wanted it to be more like an actual reading that we do or that is done, where you've got the questioner, but you don't know what cards are going to come up before you turn them over, so you can't have it all figured out in advance. So I want to look at a couple of words, and I'm going to the short words, and so I'm going to show you the cards that relate to the letters in the alphabet that make up these words, and talk a little bit about the cards themselves. But the thing is, we're looking at these major trumps for information we don't normally look at the cards for, right? We've got a word, but it's sort of getting us to think different kinds of thoughts than we would normally have, because the first letter is the Hierophant. The word I want to look at is evil, E-V-I-L. And I'm sure we've all, at some point, thought the word. It can be somebody, in a moment of desperation, we thought, this person is evil, or that situation is evil, or something. I'm sure we've all thought the word at some point. But the thing is, what did we mean when we thought this is evil? Or what do we mean if we ever use the word nowadays? Right, in the Gulf War, I think it was the Gulf War, there was the axis of evil that some speechwriter came up with that phrase. This is George Bush, I think, the first President Bush, and the invasion of Iraq, and there was the axis of evil. So what do people mean when they use the word evil? So evil is E-V-I-L. It's the Hierophant is the first, and then the V is this. Is the Lovers. E-V, and then the Wheel of Fortune for I, EVI, and the last letter is the Hanged Man. So instead of evil, you've got the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Hanged Man. And I wanted to look at this particular word and see if we can get an idea of what people mean, or what we might mean, or what we should get out of the word evil. Because the other thing is, you can put a D. D is the emperor. You can put a D at the beginning of that and you get the devil. So what's the devil card? It's described by the emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Hanged Man. And that's what the devil is. So if you want to study that card, you can always remember, you can get major trumps to help you understand what it's about. So we start with the Hierophant. So you could look at it and think, okay, the devil relates to religion, right? Because this can be the Pope, or this can be organized religion. But because we're dealing with an idea like evil, and we're not going to get carried away, because we don't get carried away with ourselves anymore. And I was aware that when I went through these 4 letters that I was going to try and see what was there and not what I wanted to see. Right? And I think if you're trying not to be like that, to be somebody who gets carried away with their own ego, then you stop being like that, because you don't want to be easily carried away and easily convincing yourself of something that isn't actually true. So I was looking at the Hierophant card, and what struck me when I looked at it was the triangular shape, because you get the fellow up here and the 2 people down below. So we've got a triangle, and we've got somebody up top. This is the important one. He's the one who gives the orders, and these 2 people down below either listen and obey, or they're learning so that they can take over his position. So what have we got with the Hierophant? If we're thinking, how does the word evil, what does the word evil conjure up, so to speak? You start with, and a word that I don't normally associate with the Hierophant, inequality is maybe the starting point for evil. Because here you've got somebody up above and the 2 people down below. So you've got an unequal organization of power, because the one up top presumably knows more, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just knows people, and that's how he got to be this high position. So you get people in higher positions and people in lower positions, and the people in the lower positions are expected to be obedient. Right? So evil's first step is inequality and maybe blind obedience. The second card, there's more to it, but we'll take it a little bit at a time. The second card is the Lovers. And it's interesting to put these 2 cards side by side, because we've got the same kind of structure. We've got 2 people down below, only here it's Adam and Eve. And we've got 1 person up above, only here it's an angel. So the second step, or maybe the first challenge when it comes to understanding evil, is who are you going to take your orders from? Are you going to take them from a person who has put himself in a position of power, or from a higher force, or an angel? Or, there's angel cards, right? So maybe what you do with evil is you buy a pack of angel cards, and when you're feeling low, or when you're feeling unequal, which can mean that you've got a problem or a situation and you feel unequal to it, as if there's nothing you can do to change it, to beat it, to overcome it. You're on the receiving end, like these 2 people down here. And maybe if you feel you're on the receiving end, you look to a higher force. So maybe you pick an angel card, and depending on which angel you get, you take courage from the the type of energy or advice that particular angel would, or the type of activity or action that particular angel is involved with. So this can be, evil involves inequality followed by having to choose which direction you're going to go in, who you're going to follow. Then we've got the I, which is, I have to hold this up one at a time, the Wheel of Fortune, right? So you've got the Hierophant and the Lovers, then you've got the Wheel of Fortune, which is a wheel going round and round, okay? And this is telling us that evil comes and goes, that there'll be times when the Hierophant person is in charge and you make a bad decision from the Lovers. But even though you do badly, the wheel is going to turn and you're going to find yourself reliving the experience or having to redo the choice because the wheel goes round, and so what was down at the bottom is now up at the top. Excuse me. EVI, and then the last letter is the Hanged Man. And is this why evil is bad? Because you end up as a hanged man. You end up suspended and stuck because you're hanging upside down. You may know something or have learned something because the head is illuminated, but you have to wonder, can you actually do anything to get out of it? And maybe the answer is no. And that's the problem with evil. You think you're stuck, even though you're not. So that's a first draft, remember, of one word to give us a starting point. So I could have been making notes about what I see or things I hadn't noticed about a particular card before. And so I come back to this word again, or this combination of cards again another time, and I look at it. And maybe I go over the thoughts that I had or the sequence that I was using, and I spot something different or something else, or I realise that this seemed to be important but actually wasn't, in the same way that George Carlin's Weatherman, it's, tonight will be dark, followed by increasing light in the morning. Right, so I can have thought something about the card or one of the cards that seemed important, but actually on reflection it's really not that important. And that's what you get with a second draft or a third draft. And the reason I wanted to look at the word evil is because if you spell it the other way, you get live, L-I-V and E. So you've got the same four cards, but in a different order. And so we look at, so you could take the statements that you made, or I could take the statements that I made for the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Hanged Man, and write them on cards and reverse the order. You could do that, but if we start here with the Hanged Man, this is our starting point. So we look at the picture, and we've got life. Okay, live, L-I-V-E. What does it mean to live or to be live? Let's see, it's live, the verb to live. So the beginning of being alive, the beginning of life, to live, is you're hanging upside down, but your head's illuminated. So is the beginning of live, the world is the wrong way around. That we look at the world, but we see it upside down. If you have a camera, when you look through the lens, you actually see an upside down version of the picture, but either the camera switches it around or the human, I don't know what I'm talking about just now, But I should look into that, about what the camera sees. I saw this program by a painter called David Hockney, and he discovered that in the 16th century, 17th century, you had painters and you had designs and perspective. And what happened was not that people became better painters or better artists, but they used technology. If you get a glass, a piece of glass, and glass was made in Bruges in Belgium in 1620, so the technology was available. It began with a drawing of an Italian cathedral, I think, in Florence. So if you, on a sunny day, you had the open doors of the cathedral, and if you walk into the back of the cathedral, which was opposite another building, it's dark in the cathedral, but if you hold up a round piece of glass, a magnifying glass, what you do is the magnifying glass will project an upside down image of the building opposite onto the back wall of the inside of the dark room. So this was the discovery that David Hockney made, so that certain pictures, paintings, were made because the artist focused a lens on the person or on the situation of the room, and the image was projected onto a canvas, and they would mark certain points on the canvas. Then they were able to draw certain lines and do the painting, and you end up with something that's very realistic. But it's because they used a lens. And the example he gives was, or part of the program. Okay, part of the program was that David Hockney set up a lens and had somebody walk across the front of the lens, and what you had was projected onto the back wall was a movie. It was a coloured moving picture using technology that was available in like 1620, right? And a camera is the Latin word for room, and a camera obscura is a dark room. Not a dark room, but a dark room, because in the dark room, projected on the back wall of the dark room, you would see what was on the other side of the lens. All of this has to do with the hanged man, right? Because the hanged man's upside down. And is this the starting point of to live, that we have to get the hang of what's the right way up? We look at things and see it a certain way, but maybe we have to learn to see it the opposite way. And that's why I've mentioned this before at different times, but that can be why when anybody says anything to you, you reverse it, and it's also true. So that when somebody says, I love you, what they mean is, I love me. And it's because they're full of love that they want to share it with somebody else. But it also means that if somebody says, I hate you, what they mean is, I hate me. And if you think back to times when you've hated somebody, the state of mind you were in at that time, you know that it's true, that you were out of sorts with yourself, but you didn't want to deal with it in yourself, so you deal with it in somebody else. And maybe that's what the first part of the hanged man, or the L at the beginning of live, is telling us about. So we've got live, we've got the hanged man, and then we've got the wheel of fortune. So this being upside down isn't a permanent state. We become the hanged man, but as time passes, we become like this. So we're still suspended, but we're looking at the world the right way up. But then we're going to go back to here again. So life is not seeing things the way they actually are, but going up and down and coming back to, let's say, this is when you see the truth, and then this is falsehood, but then you come back to truth again, but then you go back to falsehood again, but then you come back to truth again. And that's what living is it's a state of change, or it's a cycle that we go through from one state to another, back to the first state. And then we've got L-I-V. Then we've got the lovers. So what do we do with this? With the hanged man, we're upside down, but we spin around. Then, does it mean, okay, because we're the hanged man and we're spinning around slowly maybe, and we're never sure which way is up, the way we're going to know which way is up is by relating to the angel. So we're not down here on the earth plane or on earth, but we have to in some way, or if we look to the angel, we've got a chance. If we don't look to the angel, we're stuck. We're just going to go round and round, up and down. But with the V coming in here, the salvation, or the solution maybe to our problem of going round and round, is presented by or offered by the angel in the lover's card, where Adam and Eve are down below. But if they can accept and respond to the idea that there's a higher power within us as well, even though Eve is looking outside herself. But nevertheless, let's say that we've got a higher power within. Maybe if we can relate to the higher power, which isn't earthbound like these two, then, because look at that's one reason to like the Rider deck. You don't get these pictures with other decks, but look at what's around the head, the halo around the head and the hanged man. And what have we got here with the angel? It's a bit like a halo around the angel. So we go from this angelic part of us down below, and this line across here can be the horizon. So it's down below the earth. And what's the connection between the illuminated head of the hanged man and the angel? Is it saying that the challenge for being alive is to take the pure knowledge here and see it out there somehow? So we've got, and maybe the if we can get that right with the angel in the lover's card, then the Hierophant looks very different, because the Hierophant being preceded by, or having been preceded by the angel, right? We've got, with evil, we went from this power-hungry figure up here, maybe, controlling the people. But here we go from the angel, the higher self, whatever you want to call it, is replaced in a more normal, earthly, recognizable form. The angel becomes the person, the wise individual, because the Hierophant was the word Hierophant is the person who, when somebody is introduced to new knowledge, they need somebody to help them with the first steps. And the Hierophant was the person who showed them the ropes, so to speak, so that they could get more out of the learning that they had embarked upon. So maybe with Liv, because we've got the lovers, then the Hierophant, we've got a decent order that the higher knowledge represented by the lovers or by the angel is given an everyday form in the Hierophant, so that what he teaches is of value and use to the people down below. Whereas when you start with evil, we're not sure about the message that this fellow here is passing on to these two down here. Okay, that's about 5 o'clock, so I'm about to end, and I'm thinking that what I'll do is I'll do another live stream next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. So that was it. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have questions, send me an email and I'll see if I can deal with them that way. Okay, so I'm now going to go to the program and I'm going to click on stop streaming. So thank you very much. I always forget to look at the monitor up there, the camera up there. So I'm looking up there now and I'm going to click goodbye. Goodbye.